I ate 3 bags of sunflower seeds, and now I'm in so much pain. Hopefully the story isn't overly vulgar. I personally think it serves as a cautionary tale. This happened a few years ago, during the pandemic, while I was on a strict keto diet. I used to eat a lot, and sunflower seeds sort of helped curb that, since they take significantly longer to eat than chips, candy, etc. I liked the full sunflower seed, shell included, which, spoiler alert, you're not supposed to do at all. I ate 3 big David bags of seeds over the course of 2 days, shells included, while binge watching Criminal Minds. The salt split my lips and tongue, and I was constipated for about a week afterwards. Then the day came where I knew something had to be done. I hadn't pooped in such a long time, I was having severe stomach pain. Once I sat on the toilet and started pushing, it didn't take long for me to realize exactly how much trouble I was in. The seeds had accumulated into one huge, hard, cylindrical tube in my butt. Like a goddamn tree branch. I'm talking splinters and thickness. Every push sent me through agonizing pain. I turned on the shower so maybe the steam would help push it easier, but I would strain for several minutes, get most of this hell cylinder out, then lose the strength to finish the job, and it would shoot back up. It felt like I was actually pooping out a tree branch, and every time I failed to get it out, it would shoot back up into my butt. I read somewhere that squatting makes it easier, so I eventually made my way over to the bathtub, balanced on the edge of it, squatted, and pushed. It was bloody, it was painful, and it was exhausting. The sound of it hitting the bottom of the tub was heavenly, but it wasn't over yet. All of the food I had consumed after the sunflower seeds came out after that. A solid stream for about 2 minutes straight. The aftermath was horrible. It felt like I had barbed wire in my underwear for weeks after that. I know my hole will never be the same. Next story. I stuffed my face with edibles before dinner with my wife's parents. Recently, I traveled to Denver, Colorado with my wife and my wife's parents. As a resident of a non-legalized state, and as someone who is too much of a coward to regularly buy illegal drugs, the thing I was looking forward to most was the chance to buy fancy legal weed. What could possibly go wrong? So the first thing I do upon arriving, and after successfully ditching the in-laws, is drag my wife to a nearby dispensary for a shopping spree. And oh my god, it was just like in my dreams. Tons of different options in neat little sample jars, and a team of helpful stoners walking me through the various strains. Are you looking for a mellow body high? Or do you want something that gives you a little bit more pep and energy? Or are you just hoping for something light that takes the stress off? Yes, yes, and yes. I reply eagerly, like a fat kid in a candy store, and request an 1/8 ounce of about 7 different options. In hindsight, if I learned anything about this experience, it is that my math and science teacher never taught me basic information, like what is an ounce? And how much weed can a person consume in a single weekend? Sure, I can tell you when 2 speeding trains leaving separate stations will collide, or recite Avogadro's number, but it turns out that none of that information is particularly relevant to getting high in a responsible and efficient manner. It was at this dispensary that I also learned that you can't actually smoke in public places, including the hotel that my wife and I are staying at. As a result, before leaving, I begged my wife to buy some edibles that I could munch on until we found a place to properly get lit. After expressing shock to the absurd volume of drugs that we were buying, unlike me, she is a product of private school and understands the imperial measurement system. She relents, and we walk out of the store with what feels like a dump truck of weed, plus a small package of seemingly harmless ginger snap cookies. When we finally get back to the hotel room, I tear those bad boys open, only to find about a dozen tiny cookies roughly the size of a quarter. What the heck, Denver? Seeing the skepticism and hunger in my eyes, my wife warns me that I should go easy and look at the back of the package first before trying one. Dose size half a cookie, I read silently as I start taking microbites from the edges, like a giant chinchilla gnawing on a sunflower seed. But what kind of a savage only eats half a cookie? So a second later, I covertly pop the remainder into my mouth. Then I quickly stuff another 2 cookies into my mouth for good measure the moment my wife turns her back. We may not have legal weed back home, but I routinely devour an entire package of Milanos in one sitting without breaking a sweat. Your move, little ginger snaps. About 30 minutes later, we are on the backseat of her parents' rental car on our way to dinner. That's when things start to go wrong. My stomach growls, loudly and angrily. My wife looks at me with inquisitive eyes that seem to say, diarrhea? But I merely clench my tummy and I mumble something about altitude sickness. You didn't eat a whole cookie, did you? She asks. 10% in genuine concern and 90% in seething irritation. Of course not, I respond, avoiding eye contact for the remainder of the car ride. A few minutes later, we are climbing out of my parents' rental car and heading into a trendy farm-to-table restaurant. I don't remember how I made it to my seat, and I don't remember even looking at the menu. But I do remember the concerned look on the waiter's face as he asked if I was doing all right. Keep it together, man, I say to myself, but my wife's sudden groan suggests that I may have also said that to the waiter. Things are going downhill fast. The waiter nods sympathetically, takes our orders, and then heads to the next table. The moment he walks away, my wife is staring daggers at me. I start to worry that the jig is up. You are sweating from your entire face, she says with pity and disgust. Not quite knowing what to do, I reach for my napkin and I proceed to blot my cheeks, nose, neck, chin, and forehead. At this point, my wife's mom looks over at me with some concern. Are you all right? She asks kindly. Yeah, the food's just a bit spicy, I reply, far too quick to realize that we had literally just ordered and that there is nothing on the table except for a basket of dinner rolls. My wife kicks me under the table to grab my attention. Bathroom, now, she hisses. Get it together. I reluctantly get up from the table and I head for the toilet. After splashing several handfuls of water on my face, I approach a urinal and start to pee. Now, one of the more disconcerting effects of those tiny ginger snap monsters is the feeling that time has become untethered from reality. As I am peeing, I start to get a very unsettling feeling that I have been taking a piss for the better part of an hour, and that my wife has been pacing around the restaurant worried about me. But deep down, I know that is absurd. I have been peeing all my life, sometimes multiple times a day. I've probably taken more than 50,000 leaks, and it usually only takes about a minute at most. So given that my typical pee is more than 60 seconds, and given that it feels like I'm about halfway done, that means I've probably only been standing here for about 30 seconds, right? The guy next to me at the urinal doesn't respond, and instead starts shuffling away from me midstream, like I startled a penguin. I try, albeit unsuccessfully, to break eye contact. After finally finishing, I again splash some water on my face and return to my seat, making sure to apologize to the table for being gone for such a long time, just in case my mouth was off. Next, I try briefly to engage in small talk with my wife's father, but I am far too high to understand what either of us are saying, not wanting to start laughing uncontrollably at the wrong moment, or really at any moment. I figure my safest idea is to nod my head periodically and drink a ton of water. Nothing cures mental fatigue like water, right? To my wife's horror, I stand up, grab my water glass, and thrust it out to the waiter, who unfortunately is on the opposite side of the restaurant, but he turns out to be really cool, and after making his way over to the table, tells me he'll do his best to keep me stocked with ice water for the rest of the meal. He also helpfully suggests that if the dinner rolls aren't too spicy for me, I should probably eat 1 or 2 so that I'm not sitting here on an empty stomach. Smart man. However, after going through all the bread on the table and 3 glasses of water, I start to get worried that I need actual food to offset the growing paranoia from these tiny ginger snap devils. Do you think I should flag down the waiter and ask what's taking so long? I suggest helpfully to my wife. What? We literally just ordered 3 effing minutes ago. At that exchange, my wife loses her cool. How many cookies did you eat? She demands. Whoa, easy there, Torquemada, I respond, somewhat horrified at her outburst. I had a few cookies, but keep it down. I don't want your parents to know how effed up I am right now. Really? They are sitting 2 feet away from you. They know. I look up and for the first time notice both my in-laws just staring at me for what literally felt like an eternity. As for part 2 of the story, there's a reason, or technically 3 delicious reasons, why it was cut short. At that point, my wife's singular focus was on getting me out of the restaurant before I either puked all over the table or pissed myself, or an unsightly combination of both. So after a few silly two-handed goodbyes to my in-laws, she rushed me to the door like a secret agent evacuating the president. My night after that was a whirlwind of barfing and groveling, mixed with a few vain attempts at getting handsy back in the hotel room. Being the absolute awesome sweetie that she is, my wife stuck with me through the whole nightmare, whispering over and over in my ear, "Please don't die, we have a mortgage." Next story. At work, I thought a woman was a little boy and accidentally touched her chest. This actually happened a little over a year ago. So I work for the TSA and have for a few years now. It's a good job overall. I'm underpaid, but the benefits are nice, and I get overtime when I want it. During the week leading up to Christmas, we had some really bad weather that delayed all of the flights. I volunteered to stay late so that my coworkers could go home to their families. Most of the work had been done anyway, so it was mostly just standing around waiting for the odd latecomer. I was working the AIT, the space spinny tube thingy, when 3 passengers came up together. A middle-aged man, a middle-aged woman, and a teenage boy. I figured it was a family traveling together for the holidays, and I go about my work. Mom goes through, all is fine. Dad goes through, all is fine. Kid comes up, I get a good look at him. Hoodie, sweatpants, shortish hair, smooth face. I figured he was about 13 or 14. I hit the button, direct him to wait for me for a moment, and gesture to the screen, which lit up on his chest area. I tell him that I have to pat that area down. He's a little nervous. I figured that's because he's so young. This is probably his first time getting pat down. But he says okay, and I start the pat down. I do the left side of the chest and I feel some moob, which catches me off guard because he didn't look chubby at all. I move to the right side of the chest, read what's on the hoodie, and it all clicks at once. The hoodie has the name of the local college on it. This is an adult, not a child. He's not wearing sweatpants. She is wearing yoga pants. She doesn't even know the couple that just came through. I look at her face, which is bright red. My hand is still over her breast, and I pull it back like I got bit by a snake. I immediately call my supervisor, who comes over and asks what's wrong, and I explain the situation to her. My supervisor covers her mouth, and at first I thought she was absolutely mortified, but then I realized she's trying not to laugh. She takes a minute to pull herself together, tells me to take a break, and finishes screening the passenger herself. Once that was done, I apologize to the passenger. She tells me it's fine, but it wasn't the first time she was mistaken for a boy, and she probably should have said something before I started touching her. I leave her alone and I go talk to my supervisor to figure out exactly how fired I am. She tells me to calm down, that it was just an honest mistake, and that she has my back if the passenger files an official complaint. But that probably won't happen, and I shouldn't be worried. That reassured me a little bit, but I still groped a woman and I ruined Christmas. So I feel like an absolute monster. I swallow my shame and finish my shift. Then I go into the airport proper to find some food, because I just finished a 12-hour shift and there's no way I have energy to cook dinner. I saw my hapless victim sitting at her gate waiting for her flight. I went up to her to apologize again, and saw that the flight was delayed until morning. It was about 11 at night. I apologize again and she says it's fine, and I ask her if she's planning to stay the whole night. She says she has to, all the hotels in the area are booked. I tell her that I'm getting some dinner and offer to get her some food as well. After all, I already got to second base. I think it's only fair that I buy her dinner. She agrees and we go to one of the restaurants that is open late, get some food, and start eating. She said she gets mistaken for a boy a lot and it's not a big deal. I had told her how I had long hair and no beard in college, and at the gym people would frequently walk into the men's bathroom, see me, and do a double take to make sure they didn't walk into the ladies' room. She laughed and we ended up talking for a few hours before I finally told her that I had to go home, and apologized again for the accidental molestation. She said all is forgiven if I promise to take her on a real date when she gets back. I agreed, she gave me her phone number, and I went home and immediately started texting her. We kept talking until her flight finally left, and when she got back I picked her up at the airport, and a few days later took her on the date that I promised. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary.